Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Central Arkansas Library System 6 Bridges Presents Evening with Sonya Singh, author of Sari, Not Sorry. We're glad that you could join us tonight. And before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. The way to communicate with us will be through chat. And I'm going to apologize in advance that I am on my iPad instead of my laptop. And so my finger will be coming at the screen. I will be as discreet as possible, but please use the chat feature to join in the conversation. We would love to hear from you and hear your questions and comments about the book. But do not use the Q&A feature, use the chat feature. My name is Ginger Young, and I am so excited to be here hosting this event tonight. I am a bookseller at Wordsworth Books who partners with the Six Bridges Book Festival to get you the books. So if you have not gotten your copy of Sorry Not Sorry Yet, come see us and get one. And if we sell out, we can get more. So we would love to help you out and get you a copy of the book. All right. Our guest tonight, as I mentioned, is Sonya Singh. Sonya is a former entertainment reporter turned communications professional who followed, and I apologize, I'm going to put my glasses on, who followed her dream of telling stories in front of the camera and now behind the scenes. Her debut novel, Sorry Not Sorry, is an ode to her own personal dating experiences, during which she honed the art of writing the perfect breakup email in text. And it's been out 2 weeks now and has already become an instant bestseller in her home country of Canada, where she currently lives in Toronto. So welcome, Sonya. I'm so glad that you were with us tonight.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I love that intro. It was did a lot of justice to everything. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, as we've already said, this is your first novel, and but you're a storyteller as a profession. That's your bio said you have been both an entertainment reporter and a communications professional. Was writing a natural progression in your storytelling process? Just something that, as you've told these stories, you realized you wanted to do, or have you always wanted to be a writer?
I love that question because during the pandemic, I actually went through cleaning my house and I found journals, stacks upon journals upon journals upon journals. And I think as a kid and even into my teens and 20s, I just loved to write. And, I think that some of my ex-boyfriends would probably say I was a little dramatic, but, I was trying to tell a tall tale in our relationships. And somehow it really trickled down into being able to figure out what my career was going to be and whether it was sustainable. And I think that because coming from a space of being South Asian, already taking that path of a non-traditional role in TV as a reporter, and my point of view in our particular household, it was going to be tough to go to my parents and say, look, I want to be a writer now. So I think the safest thing was to be a reporter. But then inside of me, it just was a feeling that I always had. I wanted to be a writer. And I saw that, as I mentioned, through my journals. So I felt like at the time when I did start writing that it felt really natural. It was something that was there for me and I couldn't stop. And I wrote 30,000 words in 4 days. And so it certainly was a feeling that was just bubbling up and I needed someone to push me to do it myself, I guess.
That's great. Are you going to use any of those journals as, I don't know, inspiration, or are there any stories there that you may flesh out later, or is that just...
Yeah, no, they made a lot of Sorry Not Sorry. So I think that, it's a lot of teenage angst and most of those journals. I think just as a woman who was trying to really discover herself, which is the story of my protagonist, and trying to figure out the whole, dating world, because it's not something that particularly in the South Asian culture, we necessarily talk about. And in my house, it was a definite no-no. My dad, had to raise 3 daughters and it just was like, never talk about that. So I think that I used my journals as almost a friend to talk to, and it felt safe. So I don't think my mom or dad ever saw them. So it felt pretty safe to me.
That's great. That's such a healthy, like you said, safe way to express that, and how fun to come back to them and to be able to have some time away from and distance to look back on that time and say, wow, look who I was and look who I am now. And
and also just moments of like super shame. You're like, oh, you poor girl. Like, why didn't somebody shake you? Just, you're like, oh my gosh, were you really just trying to pine over this guy? And now you look back and you wonder why you even dated that person. But there was a lot of moments of laughter and just cringeworthy, pages that I think I ripped out a few times. And so they translated into Sorry Not Sorry, which I think, is obviously it's a rom-com. So there's a lot of humor, and I believe that I was built to write funny stories. And I can see that in my journal entries, and I guess through the experiences that I've had as a woman in her 20s, 30s, and eventually in her 40s.
Awesome. So did you know then going in that you wanted to write a romance? Was that, is that where you started, or did that sort of, like you said, kind of came to you as you were going through the process?
Yeah,
that didn't come out as well as I wanted it to. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I think I know what you mean, because I did. I think that I don't know if other authors know what genre they're going to write about, but for me, I certainly wanted to stick closer to home, which really represented my personality. And I think rom-com was what I am really interested in reading anyways. And I think that for me, the place that I was in, because I was going through a relationship that was really falling apart, and I tried to look for other women who looked like me, and to sort of gain that perspective, whether it was through the pages I was reading or the Netflix that I was binging. And, unfortunately there wasn't. And I think those changes happened really now. But back in the day, I grew up watching Sex and the City, and I read like Judy Blume. And so those characters certainly did not look like me. And I think that at the heart of it, when I was going through my own breakup or relationship, that I wanted to have a character that looked like me. And I still wanted it to be funny and give the idea of, if somebody was going through a breakup, which I was, that although most of us are laying around, contemplating like what glass of wine we're going to drink next and like how to get this guy back, I really wanted to have a little bit of pepper inserted in it, which gave you moments of laughter. And hopefully that's what I did with Sorry Not Sorry.
Yes, it is it's classic rom-com, which kind of leads into one of the questions that I had. So Forrest Gump famously said that his mama said, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Mm-hmm. But romances are not that way. You do know. There is a formula, there's expectations. Readers who read a romance, who read a rom-com, are looking for certain things. Did you like that? Was that comforting to you as a writer? Was it challenging? How did you work that? Is there some kind of guide out there? Just like, this is these are the things you must include in a rom-com, or the readers are going to get really angry.
Well, I think I missed that guide. I definitely didn't see it. I didn't even bother to Google it, but I just sort of went in there thinking that there is a genre that I absolutely love, which is rom-com. There's not enough representation. I didn't feel that there were enough South Asian stories. There weren't enough characters that had South Asian representation. So I didn't want to follow the formula, because to me, the formula didn't exist. And so I kind of set out to create my own formula, but knowing that there had to be, the enemies to lovers, that sort of, I guess, formula or arc in the book. And I do often get, when I went into the black hole of reading reviews, there were some people that, oh, well, this isn't like a regular rom-com, or, this treads heavy on more learning than, relationship woes. And I think, no, there's a lot of relationship woes, because she owns a breakup agency. She's breaking up people all the time. I think it's just because we haven't been familiar with this type of genre of romance, which is written from the perspective of a different culture. And so it's really taken people aback in a good way, I hope. And that's what I really set out to do. So I had a couple of goals, which was to get on the bestseller list, which I did. And also to write something that you, as a person who was not familiar with the South Asian culture, would have walked away not only craving Indian food, you wanted to go to an Indian wedding, and you probably wanted to meet a Sammy, or, like somebody in the Patel family. And I think that that's what really kept me going with what I was doing with this book.
That's great. Well, you hit, for me, now I will confess, I enjoy rom-coms, but I am probably not in the group of people who are the rabid fans who know. But you had like you said, the enemies to lovers. You had the she's in a not so great relationship and it's interesting to me that they said there weren't enough relationship woes, because her whole relationship, well, both of the main characters, their relationships that they come into the book with are full of, well, maybe they don't really, they have to discover that those relationships are not what they thought.
I know. We're trying to tiptoe around spoilers here.
Yes,
we have
been very
much. Yeah,
we made a pact to no spoilers. But yeah, I felt like that was definitely definitely addressed. And then the quirky best, you had the quirky best friend, and the just, I don't know. I think you hit it all and packaged it in a different culture. And I love what you said about that your goal was that someone who maybe wasn't as familiar with South Asian culture could read this and get more familiar with it. And that's exactly, I was telling my coworker as I was reading it, I said, it's great because this character, Manni, the main character, for those of you who haven't read it yet, is kind of on this journey of self-discovery. She is South Asian, but her parents raised her really to be focusing on her Americanness. And she was sort of the all-American girl, and they didn't talk a lot about their culture. They didn't practice a lot of traditions. And she has this moment where she decides she wants to embrace this and learn more about it. And so because she didn't know stuff, it made me, as a not South Asian reader, it helped, because I was like, well, she didn't know that either. That makes me feel better. So it was great. Just for a purely selfish, for me as a reader to get through that. And yes, I did want Indian food, and I did listen to some Bollywood music and watch some videos, and that really wanted to go try on a bunch of clothes. The fashion was so you did a great job of engaging all the senses. Like,
thank you.
I wanted to see it all, so it was great to experience that with her.
Thank you.
You've talked a lot about representation, which is so important to readers. And so you said that was something you were craving, that when you were looking at what was out there, you were not seeing yourself in books. My background is school libraries, primarily working with younger kids. And we would talk a lot about literature being either a window or a mirror, so that you're getting representation of seeing others or seeing yourself. And so it sounds like you were going at it to be more of a mirror, to see, like, I want to see myself in this, but it's working out to be a window also for people like me who are learning about the culture. Is that, was that one of your goals would you see it as being more window, more mirror, a mix of both? What were you've kind of addressed that. But.
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both. And really, I didn't know that it set out to be almost a mirror because of her self-discovery journey, which now that I look back, I went through. And so it was almost a mirror for me, because I remember those episodes of really having to take the time to learn my South Asian heritage and culture and be proud of it. And I don't think that really happened in my 20s. And it wasn't until my early 30s that I really started to appreciate my culture and my heritage and my roots, and then in turn appreciate my parents and everything they had gone through as well too. And also the thing with the idea of the window is certainly being able to give somebody the window that's open to enjoy a book like this, because I think that I didn't I certainly did not want to fall into stereotypes. And that was one of the things that I set out to do, is that I didn't want to create characters who you had seen before, so certainly, I grew up in a place where I used to see a lot of South Asian characters in roles of convenience store owners, taxi drivers. And this was off the table for me. Every character in this book, whether it's an auntie or an uncle who is, starving to get you married, these are incidences that all have happened to me. So I wasn't coming from a place of a stereotype that I had created because I wanted the reader to feel more comfort in it. I definitely used stories that had come from my own experiences, and hence those characters were fleshed out. So that was really important to me. So I think that it almost became a journey for myself in really reflecting back on everything that I had gone through, as someone who was trying to assimilate and then realize that, no, I don't actually have to do that. I can be proud of being an Indian woman, a South Asian woman who has decided to go down a path that's non-traditional. And, and I will say, these are stories that are from my point of view. So I'm not suggesting that the Indian culture at all is anything like my book, but these stories are from my point of view in my household. So those characters are very much similar to people that I have met in my family or at weddings or at Diwali celebrations. And so I've had firsthand contact with them. So I think that was really, really important to me as well.
And it struck that balance of introducing, embracing the culture, showing that these are the things that are unique to being Indian, to being South Asian, but then also showing the universality of we're all people. Like we all have jobs and we all have relationship issues and we all have family trouble, that it's, that it worked in both ways, because it was, and that was, you kind of busted some stereotypes also with some of the characters, because you represented not only the South Asian culture, but there's a LGBTQ. Whenever I say those letters, I feel like I don't say them all right, but there are characters that are represented there. One of my favorite characters was the sister Manisha, and she, I did not see her as being at least the stereotype of a South Asian woman that I had maybe seen in other things. And also I loved her body positivity, because she was not your standard body type. And so that the inclusiveness, the representation, not only showed the culture, but also those other areas too. I don't know if that was something you were going for, or if that just was a natural part of the story for you.
Yeah, I love the fact that you loved Manisha, and I didn't, again, set out to create a character that was going to push her body in a way which she used almost as a space of don't mess with me, like, here, this is my body. I'm proud of it. And I don't care what it matters, what you look like in the Indian culture. And so I think that I didn't, again, set out to do that. I think it's people in my life who are close friends and family members who look like her, who are part of the LGBTQ+ community. And so that was really important. And I think, somebody that Manni, so for instance, Manni owns a breakup agency, right? So that is certainly not a traditional role. And Sammy, he owns a decor shop that's very successful across North America. They sell different types of home decor. And Manisha is a lawyer. These are like very non-stereotypical roles that I think I wanted my protagonist and really the characters to take on. And then Elion shows up, and Elion becomes one of Manni's confidants. And, he had a difficult time coming out to his family. And I think, that's something that was a conversation I really had to dive deep into and do some more research. And so it's not that I wanted to create characters that I felt were not stereotypical. I think that once you start writing, you don't even know sometimes where those characters are coming from. But I think for me, it was coming out of a space of my heart where Manni had, she's gone through a period of grief and loss, and she needs people to take care of her. And so along the way, she met some really great people. And those people just individually happen to be the way that they are.
I love that. It was a part of the story, but again, it just adds to that universality of stories. And one of the beautiful things about books is that we all have stories to tell. So back to that, again, being both a window and a mirror for us, because we can see ourselves, and that's great. That so many different people can see themselves in the story, or see people they know and people they love. So we've mentioned a couple of times the main character of the book, Manni, is the CEO of a company called Breakup. That literally, what they do is they help people end their relationships. How did you come up with this idea for a company?
That an amazing question again. So it's funny because I actually thought about starting that business. You know, I was constantly getting friends who are single going through all these dating apps, particularly during the pandemic, when you're in a space of having to date people virtually. So you couldn't necessarily see them. And you go to have a date virtually, you know, you've added each other through WhatsApp or text or whatever it is. And then the next day the person's gone and you think you've had a really great date, but they've blocked you or they've ghosted you. And so I felt that I was really shelling out this advice. And at one point I just said to myself, I really need to get paid for this. And obviously I wasn't going to go through, you know, a business plan and put anything like that together. So I just decided to have my main character, my protagonist, own the breakup agency. And I think it's so relevant if you think about the times that we're in right now and the struggles, you know, as a single person who's trying to meet somebody. There's just so many things that are going on through virtually meeting somebody, through dating apps, and you can't keep up. And I think that the easiest thing sometimes for people to do is to walk away and not give closure. And so I think that for me, yeah, some of those were based on experiences. You know, there's people that have walked away from a conversation that I thought was really great and I never saw them again. So it was a little bit of like a poke at the end of the day. You know, I guess I got the last laugh, I like to think.
That's great. Yeah. It just seemed genius. And I was like, well, why doesn't this exist? Like,
I know.
I think maybe we're at a place you might want to think about that. So each chapter, for those of you that have not read the book yet, starts with a communication to breakup. So it's sort of each is framed that way, which is fun. So you're getting multiple people's stories, even just little windows, just the little snippets of their story embedded in. Yes. And I found that they related to what was going on in the chapter. Was that
they did. They did. And yes, very intuitive. And just a little footnote here that all of those opening chapter Dear Breakup stories have happened to me. So I took those out of experiences that I had gone through and created the opening chapters to segue into what was going to be the bulk of that particular chapter. So I did want to keep it authentic. I certainly didn't want to jump on anything that didn't feel genuine to me. And I think at the end of the day, it kind of gave me closure to a lot of relationships that I've questioned and wondered what happened. And oh, now I know what happened because, you know, so-and-so ended up going out and embarrassing me while dropping guacamole on his arm and then licking it later. You know, this is like, that actually happened to me. Actually happened to me. Yeah, that was like a Taco Tuesday thing where the date that I was with, you know, he went to go grab some guac and it fell on his arm and he licked it off in public. And this is a true story. So, you know, I just laughed because I remember thinking when that had happened, I came home and I was just kind of mortified. And that was just the trigger, like the yellow flag to all things that were going to go wrong in that relationship. So to me, it was almost therapeutic. It felt really good to go back and laugh about it and just, you know, again, have that closure for myself and not feel like that I had failed in being single or not being in a relationship and not to be so hard on myself. But, I wrote a book. Like I should just be happy about it.
It's kind of the grown up version of your teenage journals, but you got to take it and tell somebody else's story with it too. Well, for the people with us who haven't got to know the characters like we do or heard your voice, and you can even start with what we've been talking about, the snippets for the breakup email. If you're ready to do your reading, I would love for the audience to get to hear a little bit about the book. And audience, there had been a question while Sonya gets ready, where you could get the books. We physically have the books at Wordsworth Books. We are located in the Heights. You can also order them through us online, wordsworthbookstore.com. So either online or at the store itself, we can get them for you. And so Sonya's going to read a little bit of it for us now.
I am going to read a little bit. I don't know if I'll go through the whole chapter, but I'll see how far I get. And what I'll do is, so just a little setup. So I'm reading chapter 3, and essentially my protagonist, Manni, has just come back from shooting a TV show, which is like a morning show. She's really used to doing a lot of these PR stunts because she's got a very successful business. She's almost a celebrity in her own right as a CEO of a breakup agency. And she's heading into the office now after she's done the segment. And so I'll start with chapter 3. So we start with the Dear Breakup letter. Dear Breakup, what about putting the brakes on my relationship with my current girlfriend? I was dabbling in online apps strictly out of boredom and curiosity, and I met this new girl, and I'm intrigued. Why can't I just hit pause with my girlfriend of 2 years? Daniel. Also a true story. There was a guy that wanted to pause the relationship. And actually at one point, just as an anecdote here, every time he came back, he would give me a percentage. He'd say, well, I'm 70% back. And then, a week would go by and I say, okay, so what number are you at now? And he's like, well, I'm 72% back into the relationship. And I just, so now that I have all this humor to look back on that relationship, I can, put it into this book and other books, but it's a little silly if you think about it, right? So just a little sidebar there. So
no, it's 100% silly.
Yes, it is. Okay, so here we go. I stepped off the elevator into the frenzy that was always following a media segment. The office floor buzzed with bright young men and women attending to their tasks, while the beautiful sound of ringing phones and clacking keyboards filled the air. Yes, that's right. We were featured on Good Day with Alex and Maggie this morning. The team's excitement was palpable as they answered phones, while no doubt calculating the next bonus. To a first-timer, the call center would have looked like complete mayhem. But the truth was that my staff was organized and effective, attending to our clients with near military precision. I like to see my staff working. That's how I prefer to start each morning. It's one of those qualities that I found appealing with Adam, the way he talked about his team with pride and fondness. He loved being not only their leader, but also their biggest cheerleader. Now I had that connection with my team too. I pushed through the private client entrance, moving far away from the noise of the team. The matte black glass doors etched with the breakup logo closed behind me as I entered a serene, soundproof lounge. My shoes echoed across the gray and white hardwood, which added a soft glow to the room, providing a temporary distraction to clients who had come to split with someone they had once cared for. Soft music and the soothing sounds from a waterfall filled the air, triggering a relaxed feeling for the person who was about to go into panic mode at the thought of hiring us. Strategically placed reading material offered tips on being single and ready to mingle, or alone and ready to bone, whichever the client wanted. The walls, a subtle purple, were complemented by flattering lighting that created the effect of a perpetual golden hour. After all, if you happen to catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror, it helped to have the perfect light to enhance your soon-to-be single features. Clients who lacked confidence also lacked the resolve to carry through with their breakups. The better you thought you looked, the more comfortable you were with being single. It was that simple. Morning, Manni, Anjali, our office manager, said as she popped up from behind the reception desk. The executive offices were behind the client lounge, away from the hustle and bustle of the busy call center. You were such a boss in this segment this morning. You totally slayed it. And was it just me, or did Maggie look like a little, Anjali waved her hand around her face and lingered around her forehead. Yep, a little bit too much, huh? But that's also one of our clients, so we respect all the bad decisions Maggie makes, I jokingly reminded Anjali. I placed my copy in the red box with the Aja Raja logo on the glass desk. Is Rajiv actually selling Diwali boxes this year? Anjali asked. I was on him all last year to do this. I mean, sure, West Baskin isn't exactly the nucleus of all things down with brown, but with the Indian families we do have, we can still celebrate and share our food with other Baskin residents. She started to clean up the grease ring. The box was slowly leaking. Oh, by the way, Adam called a few minutes ago. He said he tried to reach you on your cell as well. Is he back from Europe? She added, as in all in one quick breath. Not yet, but soon, I said, reassuring myself more than her. It must not be easy to be in a long distance relationship. I mean, these days I can hardly manage one in the same time zone, which reminds me of a new breakup package I was thinking about. What about You've Got Mail? Kind of like the movie, but focusing on how emails are just as important as a love language. Anjali's words trailed off as I thought about dating Adam long distance and about our love language. I'll leave it there. How's that?
That's great. All right. So we've got a good introduction to Manni, who at the start of the book she's literally all business. Like that is her life. She has recently lost her parents. She was an only child. And so she needed something to fill that. And she threw herself, with the help of her now fiance, into her business and has created this very successful company and is almost laser vision driven, it feels like, at the beginning with it's work and more work. But then something happens and this is on the back of the book, so I don't think this is a spoiler for us to talk about this. So she is on a magazine cover, a very prestigious magazine cover. It's a big deal to have this publicity. And they're in a meeting and the magazine is shown and she's been photoshopped. She does not look like herself. Skin definitely lighter, other of her dominant features. Whitewashed, for lack of a better word. And it's devastating to her, like to see that is a moment of pause. She stops, and that's what sort of leads her on this journey of self-discovery that takes her out of this laser focused business and into the rest of the book. You mentioned earlier that you had already kind of gone into a non-traditional career for someone who was South Asian, being an on-air reporter, being in communications and entertainment. This is getting a little personal, but did anything like this ever happen to you? Like, was there ever conversations about maybe we need to do your makeup a little differently or tone some of this down?
Yeah, and it's not personal because I've talked about it. And I think, again, these experiences are what made my book really the way that it is now and gave the shape and form to Manni's character. And I think when I was in the industry as a television reporter, it's not that somebody said to me that I necessarily need to look a certain way. So, whitewashing myself, I actually was doing it to myself. So I would often go and buy foundation or makeup that made my skin look a lot lighter. And it's because I wanted to look like all the other women that were in the industry. And by far, they were all Caucasian. There was probably less than a handful of Indian women. And certainly they did not talk about being South Asian. So I was doing that to myself, but I was asked earlier on in my career, in fact, before I even decided to make my, entrance to the world as a reporter, my news director had pulled me to the side and said, at the time, I went by Satinder, which is my Indian name. And he told me that was not going to work and that the TV audience would not be able to really connect with someone who was named very differently than what they were used to. So I was, trying to figure out what my name was going to be and actually had no problem changing it because I was trying to be less Indian and more Caucasian. So my nickname growing up as a South Asian child, you always have a million nicknames. And so one of them was Sonu, which, is Sona, which means gold. And somehow that turned into Sonya, which now became Sonya. So it's lent its hand when I needed it to, because I was trying to fit in so badly, so desperately. But at the same time, I think I was encouraged to do that as well. And again, when you don't see people that look like you and representation is not there, you want to look like what's being represented. So I was guilty of doing that. I went through a period of dyeing my hair blonde, getting blue and gray contacts. And so I did everything that I could to not be Indian. I even remember I was reading the first Kiss series. I don't know if you'll know, but it's one of those almost like G-rated, I guess, series when you're a child, so you can get away with in your house. But one of the girls, I was just so fascinated with her as a character. Her name was Samantha. And then Samantha became popular with Who's the Boss, Samantha Maselli. And I just loved that name. And I desperately wanted to change my name from Satinder to Samantha. If that could have been an option, it sure a heck would have been. So I'm glad at least I went down the road with Sonya. But yeah, it's a good question to ask. It's tough to answer now because I feel really sad for that girl who had to go through it.
Yeah, I'm sad. I was feeling sad for her too. But look what, like we talked about, look where you are now. It's life is a journey. We get to encompass that journey in a book. We can get a journey quickly, but we're always on that journey and going to self-discovery. I think just that worked so well as a pivotal moment for Manni because of the visual. She needed something to make her stop. And that was such a powerful visual for her because not unlike you, and partly because of how she was raised, like, I don't think she thought of herself really as Indian. And her fiance, Adam, who was referenced in the reading that you did, is white, Caucasian American, and his family, a very interesting family. But it's just after she had that epiphany, like she saw the way other people saw her differently too. Like it really, like a little switch was flipped, and she couldn't go back after that. It was, it really was, it changed everything for her. Family is a really important theme in the book. As I just mentioned, Adam's kind of complicated, distant family that has these standards and expectations, and the way things are done. Like they have their traditions, but it has a lot to do with having money and business, and this is what you do. Poor Manni has lost her family. She had her parents, and they are gone. But she realizes, I think, through the course of the book, that she has created a family. Her work family, her friends have helped fill that spot for her. So you have the family you're born into and the family you choose. You represent those that way. And then the Patel family for the wedding. Just all these different versions of family. Which one would you say is most like your family, or the sort of elements of all of them in there?
Definitely the Patel family. There's just so many of them. I can't keep up with all my cousins' names, and every year I go to a wedding and there's a new cousin, and so which is so fun. It's so nice to be part of a big family like that. And I certainly think that the type of mother that I painted, Mrs. Patel, certainly is my mother. The way that she would joke and just sort of poke the bear. And I think that was who I modeled Mrs. Patel after. But, and that's, again, that is my point of view with my South Asian family, with my Indian family. And of course, not everyone has a close family like that, you know, and perhaps did not have Indian traditions growing up or roots that they could actually ask questions about. So I think I wanted to create this loving, vibrant personality with three siblings that are very different. Manisha, Sanjeev, and Sammy are three different siblings. When I think of me and my two sisters, we are very different people too. And so I really wanted to be able to create a nutshell that could be cracked. And, you know, at a time where you're thinking, oh, wait a second, I see my brother in this. I see my sister in this. I see my dad definitely saying this to me, or my mom or an auntie or an uncle. And I think that's what I really set out to do. But in Adam's defense, you know, every family's got their flaws. And I think that Adam's family's flaw was just really, and maybe that's not a flaw for somebody else, but head down work, right? They just wanted to build a business, make a lot of money. And in the process of that, they have forgotten how to function like a family because they ended up becoming colleagues. And I think that that's what I actually saw happen with a old relationship, is that in that particular situation, his family turned into his colleagues. And so I sort of modeled that after a relationship I had been in, but which is the opposite of what I grew up in. And I think what obviously Sammy has had too. And I think Manny had two loving parents whose head down, you know, precision was work, very military work. You know, that's how she grew up too. So that's why she was able to be so successful as a CEO of a breakup agency.
Yeah, and I like the way, you know, you said that, the idea of colleagues, because that is very much how I saw her relationship with Adam, that they were more colleagues than a couple in love. I mean, they were really good business partners, but maybe that doesn't always translate. And, you know, it worked for her for a while. It was what she needed after her parents died, but she realizes maybe she needs something different. We had a comment, and I apologize for the leaning forward and the finger, but I want to be able to share this. So from Rosario, or maybe Emily is the first name. I apologize. Said, I didn't realize there was a mixed couple in the book. That's so cool. I love seeing that and would love to see more. My husband and I are mixed. He's actually from India and came to the US in 2015. So, and there are more than one relationship in the book that's mixed. And I loved how that's one of the stereotypes I thought you kind of busted was, so Sammy, the male protagonist, is also in a mixed relationship. And he's so worried about his, I mean, this is how I don't think I'm giving too much away here because this all happens pretty quickly. So Manny wants to learn to be Indian, to just put it short. And Sammy needs an Indian person to go with him to this family wedding because he's worried about his family and how they would respond to his actual girlfriend. And then it turns out maybe they would have been more okay than he thought.
I think that's, and I think, you know, and I don't think that, see, the thing is, Sammy actually went to Manny because he was looking for a temporary breakup. So that was initially why he went to the breakup agency. He wanted to pause his relationship. And that's the perfect beginning to that chapter I read, which is Sammy reaches out to break up because he wants a pause in his relationship to his current situation because he doesn't think that he can take a Caucasian woman to the wedding. And I think that again, is a story that was very pivotal in my life growing up. I have had a lot of cousins who decided to date or marry non-South Asian men and women. And back then, you know, it was very, very much frowned upon. And so I was trying to really be very sensitive to the fact that Sammy, who was dating a Caucasian woman, had some preconceived notions perhaps about what other people would think. And I think that that's, something I grew up thinking as well too. When really at the end of the day, your parents just want the best for you. Like, you want to be a reporter, go be a reporter. You want to be a writer, go be a writer. You want to marry this person and they're not South Asian, go marry them. There's of course going to be some hurdles because maybe language barriers, cultural barriers. But at the end of the day, at least in my point of view, parents just want to do whatever it takes to make you happy. And I think that that's something that Manni also discovers too in the loss of grief, is really trying to understand why she was raised the way she was, and really trying to find happiness in the way she was raised instead of being so bitter about it.
Yeah. It's funny because I've read the book, and then as we have this conversation, I just am seeing Manni's journey and all the levels of it and the elements to it, that it was it was pretty big. Like that's a lot. It was big stuff for her.
It was big stuff. It was, yeah.
Yeah, it really was. Sorry, it was my brain was going faster than my mouth was.
No, and actually on that note, I will say that, because I think you mentioned earlier that you're craving Indian food and music, and I will say that the pace of this book is very much like a Bollywood movie, right? So the idea of you see someone you love and the next day you're married. Like this is how Bollywood movies end up, and they're 3 hours of a slow burn. So I think that was something that may shock some readers, is that the pacing is very quick and it's heavy on dialogue, because I was trying to really go back to a place where I was taught everything about relationships, because my parents had an arranged marriage, through watching Bollywood movies. So I was trying to sort of shadow, or at least mirror, some of what I had learned and put it into the pace of this book. And so, I think hopefully it intrigues people to watch more Bollywood movies too.
Yes. I'm guessing, were the actors and actresses you mentioned in the book, are they real Bollywood?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. There were sometimes I wasn't sure. It's like, are these created characters for the story? Or are they real?
No,
So
they're
yes,
all real.
it made me want to look into that for sure. And the framework of having the wedding was perfect,
Mm-hmm.
like for your time wise, because my understanding is the traditional wedding like this is a multi-day event. So you were able to you got us in, and then we got to be in this, we had this X number of days, and that's what we
you got a week. So that's all you get. You get a week.
So it created the pace,
and that's a Bollywood movie. A week changes your entire life. So that's what I set out to do with this book.
We had a question. Someone wants to know what your favorite Bollywood movie is.
Oh gosh, it's so hard to answer, but I will say, so growing up, I had a very huge crush on Jackie Shroff, which is a very famous Bollywood actor. And he did one of my favorite movies. He starred in one of my favorite movies, which is called Aina, and Aina means mirror. And I'm telling you, I have seen that movie at least 20 plus times. I know all the words, all the dance moves off by heart. It gives me goosebumps. Just the way he is so suave, in that movie. And I just love it. Like, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it right now too, but that's my favorite movie of all time. And it's a late 80s movie, I think. Late 80s, early 90s. Yeah.
Can you spell is it I-N-A? Is that, or no? How do you spell
it? A-A-I-N-A.
Okay.
Yeah. It's on Prime. It's on Amazon Prime.
Okay, good. That's what I was going to ask if you knew. Where can we find this movie?
Yes.
That's great. Sorry, it's going back to my list here, and I'll check with our audience too. So honesty, I was thinking again of the themes. Breakup is like, that's one of the foundational principles of the company, is helping people to be honest in their relationships. So you need to end this relationship. You need to be honest about that with the person. Don't ghost them. Let them know, and be honest about why? And then all the things you were reading in the chapter you read about the other services they offer, like things helping people with self-discovery and self-confidence and things that just help them be better people and be more of who they are. But there's so many characters and like there's so much dishonesty in this book, like not in a bad, not in a, you know, in a very real way. So the whole premise of Manny going to the wedding with Sammy is
a lie.
A lie. So his family won't know he's dating a white woman. Her mother had this relationship before her father that she didn't know about for a long time. So there's
she lies to Adam. She goes away for a week. She lies to Adam.
Yes.
And yes, there's the entire Patel family is lying. So there is lie after lie after lie. And I think that, sorry, were you going to ask a question? So
well, I was just going to say it's, no, it just was more like just a theme that I wanted to discuss just because I thought that, I don't know if irony is the right word, but just that breakup was all about honesty and all these people. And so much of it though comes from a good place. Like, I hate to say like, all these people are lying, but because a lot of times they're doing it to protect people or they think to protect people to, but it just, it in true romantic comedy fashion leads to all these misunderstandings and miscommunications because no one's like, and a lot of times they all end up talking to Manny, but they don't talk to Sammy. So they're like, this is, you know, and she's like, you should tell your brother these things. Or Manny's best friend, Rob, says, you know, well, your parents, blah, blah, blah. She's like, well, why didn't they ever tell me this? He's like, I don't know. They just, your mom and I had this conversation. So all these people trying to protect other people, but it's just leads to complications and problems.
Yeah. And I think, so to me, I don't know if you're right. They're lies. But we have this, you know, we have this saying in Hindi and Punjabi, which is like adding masala. They say it to a story, right? So masala is a spice that we use for most of our dishes, and you're kind of just like peppering the truth. You know, you pepper it with a little exaggerated version of this, or you didn't tell somebody this. And I was keeping that theme very much alive with the Patel family. But I also think, you know, one of the things that I talked about earlier, which is it's very difficult, particularly if you're first generation South Asian and you have been raised in a household where you have parents who've been arranged through marriage back in India and they've come to Canada or the US. And those conversations of love or dating are not on the table. So you end up, you know, lying. You don't tell your parents who you're seeing behind their back, and you are lying where you are, you know, at this time. It's stuff that we all do as teenagers, but for some reason this one went well into their 30s, you know? So I think that's what I was trying to do. And I don't think she had a choice but to lie to Adam to go away for the week. And so, you know, we later find out there was multiple lies everywhere, but it certainly wasn't, to me, a theme I wrote out to do. I think I just had experienced so much of not telling the truth to my parents growing up, particularly when it came to dating boys, that I just sort of carried it on with the Patel family.
All right. We had a question about your writing process. How do you, I will read it because he worded it very nicely. Sorry again for the fingers. Mark wants to know, how do you fit writing into the rest of getting through your day? So as when we were talking before the chat opened, you reminded me this is your first novel. So you are not making a living as a writer right now. Like you have a day job. You're doing other other things. How do you strike this balance? How do you make it fit? What's your process?
Well, to be frank, it's been really tough, particularly leading up to debut, because you are putting all of your eggs into one basket, which means you're really focusing on the debut basket. And that means giving yourself up for any media opportunity, any opportunity to speak to somebody, whether it's through social media or engage with a potential audience. And so work has sort of slipped to the back burner, but I own a PR business. It's my bread and butter for now, and we'll see what happens. Obviously, I'm writing my second book, but the balance is you literally just have to make the time. So in order for me to write this book, I had to make time in the mornings, early in the mornings. And I think my friends will tell you that I didn't see them for a very long time. There's many events I missed, many dinners I missed. I'm sure my relationship at the time also fell apart because I just was constantly, hey, I'm editing. And really, like, that gets dry after a while. But I was always editing. I'm a debut. So my, writing wasn't as fantastic as everybody wanted it to be. I was learning a lot too. And I think that it was particularly in a period of time where we did have the pandemic. So I kind of lucked out. We couldn't necessarily go anywhere. And I had this time to stay at home and to be able to balance both. But it certainly has gotten tougher. And I think you have to be able to work for someone who understands that you have a side hustle and is willing to allow you to go into the middle of your day and do an interview, to leave work early and go attend a reception in your honor, to also see that your social media accounts are all dedicated to your book versus work, right? So your real job. So it takes a certain person. I think I lucked out to be able to work with clients and employers who are feeding my hustle and have allowed me to make room for it. And I think that's really important. That's been my goal from day one, is to have people who are championing me, who are cheerleading me in my corner. And I think that's the only way you'll be able to make that time, is if you're getting that push of positivity from everyone. So you just have to do it. Like, do you think sleep exists as a writer? No, that's not a thing. It's like not a thing. Sorry, Mark, that's not a thing.
So you're working on a second book. You told me that earlier, that it's a sequel sort of, and that you're expanding on one of my favorite characters from the book, Manisha, who was Sammy's sister. So that you've started that one, and that's what you're working on in all your free time right now.
Yeah, I am. I'm working on that. So that's due at the end of June. And I don't know if you know this, but I'm also writing the first South Asian Hallmark holiday movie. So yes. So Hallmark has given me this amazing opportunity to use Crown Media and their channel to write the first Indian South Asian Christmas holiday movie. And it'll come out in December 2022. I've written the script. It's called Christmas Spice. And so all of these things are happening while I'm working. So there's a lot going on, but again, I'm super grateful for every opportunity that's come my way.
That's great. Yeah, we'll be looking for it. Someone has said, that's amazing. I love Hallmark movies.
Yeah.
Again, it's that if you're in this genre, like I said, there's something comforting about a rom-com, about a Hallmark movie. But then you're able to you took those things, the stuff we wanted and expected, but spiced it up and made it your own.
Thank you.
Strongly recommend this book if you are a fan of rom-coms. And I hope that what we've talked about here tonight has piqued your interest. And be on the lookout for so you said this Christmas, or this December 2020 is when that your holiday movie will be out. Awesome.
Yeah,
and
December 2022.
When are we looking at the second book coming out?
It won't be till next year. So I think probably spring of next year. It'll be another beach read. So yeah.
Awesome. Good timing then for that. All right. Our final question, because I think we're closing out on time. What is your favorite Indian food dish?
Ooh, so during the pandemic, I actually perfected the art of making deep fried naan. believe it or not. And I do it I know it doesn't sound very healthy, but I can do it in a very healthy way, which you actually use Greek yogurt, a lot of water, and I used almond flour. So the base was healthy. It just was when you put it into the deep fried oil that wasn't healthy. But I love a good channa bhatura. So channa bhatura is a large roti that's deep fried, which is the naan. And then the channa is chickpeas or garbanzo beans that have been added with like masala and all these like beautiful turmerics and the Indian spices. So that is my all-time favorite dish.
And now we're hungry.
I know. Me too.
Eat some naan.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for giving us your time. She's in a different time zone, so she's up a little, not too late.
That's
so
okay.
Thanks so much for joining us. And come see us at Wordsworth and get your copy of the book. There was a question about, is there a promo code? Nope, just go online and do a traditional online order. Please call us at the store if you have any questions. And thank you so much, Sonya. Everyone have a great night.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, take care. Bye.
Okay,
See you later.
Bye.